Think about it, are video games caricatures of real life? Hi, I'm Dylan, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, bear with me. The ability for computers and gaming consoles to process more information faster has led to a drastic increase in the amount of polygons that can be shown on screen at any one time, which is one of the defining characteristics of next-gen gaming. Typically, the higher the poly count, the prettier the game. In fact, poly count, or graphics, is probably the most competitive field for AAA games. And since the mainstream sadly focuses so much energy on graphics, there's been a bit of a throwback to low poly graphics on the indie side of things. But as far as graphics and poly counts have come, in many cases, storytelling hasn't yet caught up to them. A similar problem happened during the transition from stage to film. The invention of the motion picture camera allowed for the first time ever for the audience to be brought up right next to the actor, allowing for subtle human emotions to be broadcast in ways that were never before possible. This also happened with the invention, if that word applies, of crooning, where the singer would sing right into the microphone so it sounded like he was singing into your ear.
The moon was shining bright in Carolina.
Which is also partly why opera was so popular. Before the invention of microphone and speakers, you had to be really loud to be heard by everyone in the auditorium, and opera was a style of singing designed to make the singer as loud as possible. But then bam, microphones are invented, and suddenly a bunch of different types of singing rose to popularity. But back to film. This led to what we know today as stage acting, which is when someone overacts in order to get the story across to people sitting all the way at the back of the auditorium.
My eyes! Ah!
Which is the same reason why stage actors have stage makeup. Makeup designed to over-accentuate their bodily features so their detail isn't lost on people sitting super far away. Art is always subject to technology. Creators will always do their best with the available technology, and their best will always change with technology. Painters were limited by available resources for making brushes and things to paint on. Musicians were limited by available instrument technology. For example, no trumpets or brass instruments had valves until the 18th century. And recent remix artists were limited by the lack of internet and openly available resources. When film was invented, the first movies looked a lot like theater. They had really wide shots with everything in them and everything in focus, and actors who acted like they were on stage. But then they realized, hey, we could move the camera closer, but still many actors acted as if they were on stage, and many movies still felt like plays, even though they weren't. And it's this stage, this awkward period of transition, that video games find themselves in today. Until recently, realistic looking graphics were virtually non-existent. But now, thankfully, we have beautiful looking games like The Last of Us, which admittedly doesn't look as good as real life, but it's definitely past the Uncanny Valley, which is the period in which something looks almost human, but not quite, and the result is something incredibly uncanny. The Last of Us looks amazing, and it's able to explore real human emotion through subtle facial expressions that simply weren't possible 10 years ago. Low poly characters in video games were designed in the same way that stage makeup is used on stage. In a low poly game, you couldn't have Joel looking the way he does, because then he'd just look like every other character in the game. The result of this is low poly characters that all look really wacky, or at least they have something about them that makes them really easy to visually differentiate from other characters. Instead of saying, oh yeah, it's that white dude with brown hair, you'd say, oh no, it's that round blue girl with poofy hair. Instead of describing Nathan Drake, yet another white dude with brown hair, you'd describe Mario, the short, round, red, mustachioed, hat-wearing Italian plumber. Instead of saying, you know, the insomniac photojournalist, you'd say, you know, the orange and red spacesuit wearing chick. These are easy and effective ways of differentiating characters in low poly video games, something that doesn't need to happen in our world of high poly video games, but it still is. Let's pick on Watch Dogs for a minute. Minor spoilers. In Watch Dogs, you play as Aiden Pierce as you seek revenge for the death of your niece. It's a rather serious toned story set in a very real, slightly futuristic, open world depiction of Chicago. Along the way, you team up with legendary, mysterious, computer hacking genius Raymond Kenny. And what I was expecting was a character with deep-seated trust issues, because he's been pursued his entire life. But instead, what we got was a redneck with long hair, a braided beard, arm bracers, and a frickin' hat with goggles. You also work with Clara Lilly, a mysterious hacker with a plan. But instead of any character substance or emotional depth, what we got was a French-Canadian chick with a leather jacket, half-shaved head, a streak in her hair, lots of tattoos, and again, super obnoxious bracelets. Instead of being given characters that we can easily differentiate by their faces, we're giving characters that we can easily differentiate by their outfits. It's the difference between The Simpsons and The Wire, which is incredibly counterproductive because what I can't take seriously is a serious game that builds a serious world with serious consequences and a serious story that has me put together a ragtag group of troublemakers that look like characters out of Pokemon. Especially since studies show that humans recognize faces better than any other aspect of the human body. Assassin's Creed unfortunately has the same problem. Damn it, Ubisoft. The main character is always, as the name suggests, an assassin who relies heavily on social stealth, blending in with crowds. They even go so far as to create a hidden blade in a wrist bracer, which is all well and good if there's a single other person in the world dressed like you. But past the first game, there isn't. How am I supposed to believe that a guard could ever be confused about who killed his buddy when he sees a guy walking away from the scene of a crime dressed in an all-white assassin eagle outfit with 10 different types of weapons strapped to his body and an Assassin's Creed emblem as his belt buckle? Also, why have a hidden blade if you have plenty of regular exposed blades? Destiny, Far Cry, Dead Island, the more realistic Zelda titles, and many more all fall victim to this awkwardness. They all have characters that look like actors wearing stage makeup on screen. In a world moved forward by technology, it's a really big shame that we don't leave time for storytelling to catch up. This is going to become a bigger and bigger problem as the future of gaming is virtual reality. Oculus Rift just announced their release date and everybody is losing their minds, but maybe they shouldn't. VR is meant to create a virtual reality. Duh. But how can it do that with characters that are far more virtual than realistic? The same thing happened around the recent surge of 3D movie popularization. Avatar was the first movie shot and released in this new type of 3D, and it sucked. Visually, it was amazing, like Watch Dogs, but its plot and characters were caricatures, like Watch Dogs. As long as we keep focusing on graphics and technology in video games, it will be a long time before storytelling catches up in order to use that technology effectively. What do you guys think? Is technology leaving art in the dust? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, be sure to click right on my face to subscribe, or at least think about it. Does the militarization of Batman reflect our own society? Let's see what you guys thought. A lot of you pointed out that the tank I talked about wasn't a tank, it was an armored personnel carrier, or APC, and I'm looking at it again and it might be an APC, but it's a tank. Or Up to the Stars writes that we should focus on developing more effective non-lethal technologies, which I think is totally true. I mean, even using tasers has killed people before who have heart conditions and stuff. So I think we definitely need to focus on that. Alexander Washington follows up that comment saying that police aren't protectors, they are enforcers of the law, and that everything they do is to enforce said laws, which I agree with you in most cases, but shooting and killing unarmed civilians enforces no law. Cosmo Sheehan points me to Dark Knight Returns, which features Batman riding a tank that has rubber bullets, and apparently that was the basis of the Christopher Nolan Tumblr, and he says that it was a reflection of the Reagan era. So I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. That sounds cool. Dylan Harkey points out that maybe Batman should be allowed to kill people because we should be telling Batman stories that are applicable to our generation, and maybe our generation craves violence in a way that previous generations didn't. I think that's a really interesting approach. Maybe we should expand the borders of what Batman's allowed to do. Maybe, I don't know if, it would probably upset a lot of people if you had Batman kill somebody, but I mean, haters gonna hate. Hate. And players play. I can't stop listening to that song. Jappy2214 comments saying the best thing ever, that maybe Batman is the bad guy in the new Batman vs. Superman, hence the versus title, which would explain why he has a tank or Batmobile that can kill people. That would be awesome. I would love to see Batman as a bad guy. Please make that happen, Zack Snyder. I will forgive you for the atrocity that was Man of Steel if you do this for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments. Cool. That only took a year.